I wanted to ask you about that because I was noticing as I was going back through, oh, yeah, there is kind of a lot of grief in your
Yeah.
books. Why, without getting too personal,
Yeah.
why do you think that is?
Well, you can get personal, if you'd like. And a lot of people, kind of make jokes about the dead parents in middle grade literature. Got to get them out of the way so the kids can do stuff. But for the case of my first published novel, and part of me wonders if I didn't put a little bit more of my heart into this one. In this story, Becky Thatcher she moves to St. Petersburg with her family. Her father is Judge Thatcher. Her mom is in a deep depression due to the death of her brother, her beloved brother, John. And Becky wears his clothes and she goes out adventuring and she has his marble sack and it helps her feel close to him. But the character was named after my brother-in-law, John. I started writing this book after he passed away, and he was 34 and he left my sister widowed with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old daughter. And so he was the closest thing I've ever had to a brother. So part of the book was written for him. And I think that almost everything I write has a piece of that in it. So
Does that, I'm assuming that fulfills something within you that helps you with the grieving process at the same time you're helping the reader?
I think it does. I think it definitely does. Yeah. And I think that a lot of writers do that. We process our own emotions, we process our own beliefs, and we're trying to, I don't know, when I guess I write for the same reasons I read. I want to go on a journey, and I like to find out what kind of person I want to be, because I'm getting up there, but I'm still growing. What kind of person I am and what kind of person I'd like to be. So there
I
you go.
think what happens is you get to be 99 and a half and you go, oh, I get it. At the end. Oh, I've got a book that was one that my agent loved. We had a few editors that were very interested in, and we couldn't make it work. But it's about a girl dealing with grief, and it's one of those that past a certain point, I held it back, and it's on my shelf, not to stay, but it's there because I'm of an age where not only am I getting up there, but some people very close to me are getting up there as well. And I'm gonna need that book. I don't want to do that now when I'm not grieving. I'm gonna bring that back and revisit that when I need that catharsis.
Oh, we're gonna turn this into a sob fest, Rob.
I know. Let me tell you about something that very sad that happened to me in my childhood. Nope, we're gonna pivot away and we're gonna talk more about Becky Thatcher, because that was the first of your books that I read. Obviously, my first book anybody read. And what struck me at the time, and it still strikes me, is just what a brilliant idea. I was so impressed because I remember seeing that that the publisher did what you would hope they would do, which is repackage it with Twain's original
Crazy.
Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my, who is this brilliant woman? That idea was just there. Anybody could have grabbed it, and nobody did. And then Jess Lawson, here she comes. She's got it. So
I got lucky.
Where did that come from? What was it that wanted you to play around in Mark Twain's universe?
Well, first of all, when I saw that they actually put them in a set, and then there's this box set that says like Mark Twain and Jessica Lawson, I was like, oh my gosh, I peaked. I'm done. This is it. So yeah, my dad's a fan of that one. But this came, of all things, I was dusting, which is one of those things that as a kid, like you don't think anyone really does. But I was dusting in Colorado, my little bookshelf in our little house. And I have a couple different copies of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So I was dusting the top of it and I pulled it out and I started thinking about like why it was that there's a girl character in there, Becky Thatcher, the main girl character. And I never really connected with her. I always wanted to be Tom, or preferably Huck, who had a little bit of a harsher background, but more freedom. But I just felt sorry for her. I felt like she didn't get to have any adventures. Like, I'm sure Mark Twain, I'm never going to question the writer's intent or anything like that, but I felt bad for her. I was thinking to myself, I was a lot more like Huck and Tom as a girl. And obviously the times were different and she didn't have a choice, but I found myself wanting desperately for Becky Thatcher to have some adventure and to be a little bit more tough and to not want to marry Tom and all this stuff. So I went ahead and I wrote it, and again, like, no expectations here. This was the 9th book I had started. I keep your hopes high, keep your expectations low. That was my motto. I didn't expect it to really go anywhere. And I had fun with it. And the voice, for whatever reason, came easily. And to this day, I've never written a draft as fast. And that may be because I have children, but I think it's just because every book I write gets harder for me to write. But 6 weeks for a first draft. And that is, I've never written anything that fast. So obviously it had a ton of work to do after that, but my agent and I worked on it, and then it really didn't need that much revision by the time it went to the editorial board, which is why it was, after it was accepted, it was published the following year. And I know you know this, sometimes you get a book deal and it takes 2 years for it to come out, but I was just really, really lucky. But that's where the idea came from, dusting. Which is kind of a Becky Thatcher thing to do. Yeah,
you heard it here. Authors, dust more.
Yeah, dust that bookshelf.
And what? So of course, the double-edged sword of that is, on the one hand, oh my gosh, I'm in a box set with Mark Twain, which is the most wonderful thing that could happen. But oh my God, I'm in a box set with Mark Twain. People are going to be looking, are you as good as Mark Twain? Which is not. And I think you are, but it's not a reasonable question to ask of anybody. What a lot of pressure. So how was it that because when you read that book, you know that it's not quite Mark Twain. It's obviously hey, it's not Mark Twain, but the prose and the style are so very similar that you read it up and it is of a piece. Like, oh, this is where the story continues. This makes sense. So how did you go about getting your cadence and your prose down to a Mark Twain type rhythm?
Well, and here's the thing. I'd read that book a lot. I've read a lot of Mark Twain short stories, things like that. And at the time when I picked it up and had ye old epiphany, I hadn't read it in several years. It's just part of, where you've read a book so much and you know the story and you feel like you know the background, but I hadn't read it. And once I got my idea, I was afraid to read it again because I did not want to copy the voice. I tried to make it a point not to read it. So what I did was I got up on Cliff's Notes, that site where kids who haven't read the book try to cheat and get down the details so they can pass their school tests.
Oh, goodness, no, I would never visit a site like that. I would only ever read the book.
No, or to help you with a summary. So what I did is I made sure I had my plot points down and I looked at character names and I saw things that I would want to switch, things that I wouldn't necessarily want to include, and how to kind of make my own narrative that fit into it. Because in my book, Samuel Clemens is in fact a character. The book takes place in 1860 when Samuel Clemens was, in real life, a riverboat pilot on the Mississippi. So in my version, it has him, his boat gets kind of docked and has to stay there in the fictional town of St. Petersburg. And he stays with the Sawyers and he's kind of observing the town's happenings. And if you look closely and if you read the book, you'll see snippets here and there of things that take place in Tom Sawyer. There's a discussion about like faking your own funeral or something like that, which is a scene out of the book. And there's a kind of a twist at the end that really gives you insight into her brother, John, and John's place in the work of Mark Twain.
It was such a smart thing to do because obviously I'm a Jessica Lawson fan. I was excited to read the book and I said, well, of course, why wouldn't you want to write another book set in the Twain universe when you can do it? I wouldn't do it because I don't have the skill, but you do, and you should. But I'm sure that there are readers out there who have very passionate feelings about Mr. Twain that say, oh, who's this Jane come lately gonna write a new Mark Twain novel? It's so smart to have Samuel Clemens featured in there, and just to as a way within the story itself to acknowledge that yes, we all know that this isn't officially canon. You can still write your theses and whatever it is that
Yeah.
you're doing with the original Twainberg. But here's something new and exciting that you can enjoy. That's just such a stroke of genius that I thought on your part when I read it.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you. Yes, there will be no other books in the Twain universe, I don't think, on my part. I think one was probably pushing it and we pulled it off. So